Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. The Breeders' Academy proudly presents Bred to Perfection with Kenny Troiano, a show for serious breeders.
Whether you are looking to create a new strain or simply improve an old one, you have come to the right place.
Daddy, I want more chickens.
Oh, boy.
Now, here's your host, Kenny Troiano.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bred to Perfection. My name is Kenny Troiano, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you become a better breeder and taking your strain to the next level. That's right, my friends. It doesn't matter if you are brand new to breeding or you've been breeding for many years. There is something all of us can do to improve our fowl for future generations.
It's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders' Academy, and I'm here with my wife, Nancy, and my co-host, Frank Bradley. What's going on, guys?
Wasn't there an 80s commercial, You Don't Fool Mother Nature?
That was
Am I right about that?
That was it.
Yes.
That brought back some childhood memories for a second. I was like, I've heard that before.
I was thinking about what kind of short I wanted to do, considering we're going to be talking about Mother Nature. And by breeding and staying as close to Mother Nature, we actually improved the results in our strains. And that just popped in my head. I was like, I wonder if I can find that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was
a good
fun.
one for the title.
I don't normally show Nancy the shorts before, but I had to show her. I said, Nancy, you got to see this. And when the lightning went on, because I had to actually change the lightning, because the lightning didn't actually come through on the MP3 very well. So I had to change the lightning, and then I added the rolling thunder afterwards. And Nancy, the look in her eyes when that happened, she's like, that was so cool.
That's Kentucky Thunder.
Wow.
We just don't get the little boom, and that's it. It's like boom, and
it just rolls.
And you can feel the vibration under your feet. Sometimes they'll go on for 20, 25 seconds long.
Wow.
We have a good outline today, and I'm excited to jump into it because I think this is really important. One, you're going to have to grasp to really understand the breeding process. I just want to let you know that I was on the Cana Corsos, and we did an episode on what kind of breeder are you? It was a fun episode. I had a good time. So make sure you go check that out. And it was funny because when I got done, because Nancy was watching it, she goes, why didn't you say this? Or why didn't you talk about that? Or why didn't you bring up that? I'm like, you needed to be on the show with me because that's why Nancy's on the show. And she so need it because she makes sure that Frank and I are clear, that we don't miss anything.
George says, Nancy, don't forget the ads. You might get fired. And I said, I did get fired.
Yeah, I'm going to do the ads.
Didn't last long, did it, Nancy?
No.
You do it wrong, and then you don't have to do it anymore. So.
I done it 3 times, got fired. He took it back over. He got fired. He fired himself, and then he put it to Nancy, and she got fired.
We won't talk about some of the other people we fired along the way, too. So.
I am not exempt from getting fired, folks.
Yeah, but with you, Nancy, you have the right to draw some workers' compensation.
Workers' comp, yeah.
Benefit. Yeah, during the time. The others didn't have that. They didn't get that.
Okay.
I still get paid.
Yeah. So I want to thank all the new members. Really appreciate that you came to the Breeders' Academy and joined us and that you're trusting us in your journey and taking the time to become a better breeder and that you're taking your breeding more seriously. Make sure to begin with the Start Here pages. There's a lot of information in there. Try not to absorb it all at one time. If you need any help, just let me know. There's a lot of great programs in the works, and then we have a lot of new material on the way. And I've had a few people ask me, I see all these big numbers on YouTube, where's all the videos? And I'm like, we keep a certain amount on YouTube itself, but I do take them off after a while and I archive them on the website, the Breeders' Academy, for our members. Like I said, all the recent videos will be on YouTube, but then I move them over to the Breeders' Academy. We've done like 190 podcasts, and a small portion of them are on YouTube. The rest are either on podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and then they're also on the website, including some of the members-only podcasts. And this will be 130 today, and a small portion of those will be on YouTube, and the rest are on the website, along with the members' roundtables, the master's class videos, and all the other videos that we produce. For the members, make sure after this show to join us inside the Breeders' Academy so we can do the members' roundtable. That will be live, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end, so make sure to meet us there. And then the topic we will be covering will be why it's important to protect the integrity of your bloodline and how. And then for some of you that are thinking about joining the Breeders' Academy, this is a good time to join. We have the Master's Class videos. We have the Founders Program, which I think is the best program out there for maintaining, creating, or improving your strain. Then we have all the programs and courses to support the Founders Program, along with the members' resources, the daily articles, and the members' roundtable. And we are adding new material every week. We got more Master's Class videos coming, more programs, more courses, more articles. And we also do coaching calls with our members too. So if you need a coaching call, just contact us and we'll schedule it and we'll get right on that. And then make sure to join our newsletter. Just go to www.breedersacademy.com. There you're going to get a lot of free articles, free tips on breeding, a lot of free material, such as ebooks on breeding. Like I said, I'm excited about this one. It's important for you to know, along with the breeding methods, the breeding programs, genetics. I was talking to Frank about this when I thought about doing something on Mother Nature. I started writing things down like breeding in the spring, watching out for summer, watching out for winter. And before I knew it, I started leaning more towards evolutionary biology, genetics, because they really do tie in to the way you breed your fowl closely. And we're going to be talking about that today. And before I get started, I want to play a little clip for you. And this is going to be from Rick Coast from Evolution Talk. And he's been on our show. He also has a book on Evolution Talk and a podcast along with his YouTube videos that he just started. If you like his material, a lot of what he teaches has a lot to do with what we're doing here, then join his Patreon because he's going to have a lot of new material there. So let me play this soundbite.
Organisms evolve and change. It's a fact. We see it everywhere, both in nature and in the science labs. And it's why professional breeders are so successful. They know what to look for. They know what features to discard and what features to work on. Professional chicken breeders do this all of the time. The same with dog breeders. They understand heredity and change. That's evolution. Now, you could make the argument that when a breeder does it, it's just artificial selection. That's valid, but it's also the way natural selection works, just without the breeder. And Darwin noticed this, and that's what caused him to look at the world differently and come up with his hypothesis.
Frankie's right. The organisms do evolve and change, and the proof is all around us, everywhere we look. We were talking about in the back, that if evolution wasn't a thing, then we would still have jungle fowl. We wouldn't have all the chickens we have today, and we wouldn't have all the different breeds and varieties we have today too. That's all evolution.
Yeah. And we was talking about this before the show, Kenny. A lot of people out there that's had chickens for years haven't the slightest clue that gamefowl, the chickens that we breed today, are man-made. They think the traits that they carry was made by Mother Nature, which we know it was done by selective breeding for a particular trait and be used for different things. Egg, meat production. Look how far we've come just in the commercial industry with the meat and egg chicken. The way they have done them genetically and have made them into what we actually need. What is it, like weeks?
No, 37 days.
Or 37 days. And the bird's on your plate. That's crazy.
As breeders, we know what to look for. We know what we want to see. By breeding to the desirable, culling out the weak and the undesirable birds, we shape our strains. And because of that, we're able to sculpt and mold our birds into desirable forms and functions. Because of that, we're able to breed our birds to meet a specific purpose. And that's all due to evolution. Like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that we couldn't change them, we wouldn't have all the breeds that we have today. And I think that's real important to understand.
One thing you don't see Mother Nature doing is running a hospital. And that's what I try to tell people. Mother Nature doesn't use medications. They don't recuperate a chicken that's ill or sick or diseased. If it's inadequate and it's not the dominant of its strain, it's not going to make it anywhere. She puts a foot on its throat and says, you're done for. I'm not going to allow you to breed in my environment. And that's what good breeders do. They pick the ones that carry themselves and the certain traits that they desire and look for. And we can do it in such a short time. Now, Mother Nature may take a little bit longer to do it, but still she does it right. And we can do the same thing with selective breeding.
And I think if we stay as close to Mother Nature as possible, we're going to be more successful. And I think you're right, Frank, is when we fight Mother Nature, we work against her. Those are the times we see sick chickens. Those are the people, if they're fighting it and working against her, not working with her, those are usually the people that are using the medications and they're reliant on the medications. It'll be a lot easier to raise, breed, and improve your birds if you understand Mother Nature. The more we can emulate natural selection, the better we are going to be. And I based a lot of the Founders program on the Founders effect, which is basically genetic drift. And if you understand genetic drift and how that works, and if you can control the flow of genes and get to a point when not only do you control the flow of genes, but you get to a point where you're stopping the flow of genes, that's when you start improving the birds. You're never going to create a strain by adding new blood. It just doesn't work like that.
You mentioned the paths. You can go down the path like Mother Nature and breed only the birds that are at the highest of their strain. Then you can go over here and you breed the sick, the ones that's not deserving of breeding, that Mother Nature would kill immediately. And I believe you're right, Kenny. I think that's where a lot of them becomes dependent on medicine, antibiotics for survival. Because with Mother Nature, if they can't live on their own and forage on their own and get their own food and do everything by themselves, they're done. They're over with. They don't get that right to breed back, to repopulate their surroundings. But we as breeders can get off on the wrong path, so to say, and go down that way with the medications. And that's the reason me and Kenny is so against medications, because if they ever had to go back to the wild, they'd never make it because they would be too sick to tolerate it. They'd never, ever get to reproduce because they'd die off before they ever got there.
Tony and I used to say that if there was one breed that you could just let out in the wild and it would survive and thrive and perpetuate itself, it would be the gamefowl. But you look at the way people are raising them and the way they're reliant on medications, I'm not so sure anymore. I don't think they can survive their environment. Breeding towards Mother Nature is breeding fowl that can survive in their environment, and most don't. I think mine can. I don't rely on medications. I don't rely on anything extra to keep my birds alive. I think I actually could let them go, and I think they would do pretty well.
See, that's the part that I don't get, why people wants to even go that route. Yeah, it's tough at first, but it's so much easier to have a strain that's disease resistant that you don't have to give medications to survive. A cold front comes in, give them medications, keep from them dying. I don't want that on my yard. I really don't. I've had it that way for many years. I've bred chickens that way for many years. But once I realized that I was just intensifying that sickness with breeding sick to sick, that's when I backed out of it. And I said, there got to be a better way, because some of the medications, just the antibiotics alone, are thousands of dollars a year buying those things. It's according to how many chickens you got, but if you've got a big yard, that's a lot of money you could be sticking in your pocket without having to rely on medications to keep your birds alive.
I couldn't even tell you how much medications are. I haven't used them in so many years. Ever since Tony threw my medications in the trash, that was the end of my medication use right there. But the biggest question is, why is it best to breed like Mother Nature? And Frank, I was thinking about that. Biologically, nature always follows the path of least resistance. What does that mean? It just means that everything's easier. You just go with the flow. The birds that come down sick, you cull them. Anything that looks like it has a defect, you cull that too. So you cull all the sick, defective, and substandard birds, and what are you left with? Pretty good birds. And one of the ways to do that is to let them free range. Let Mother Nature help you with the process. And then usually what you're left with are pretty good birds, and then you can take over from there.
That's how I do all mine. Every bird that I've got, free ranges. You've been there, Kenny. You've seen the hillside where they go. You go up in the morning time or in the middle of the day, you wouldn't think I had a chicken there, hardly, except the ones in the pen. But when it comes time to roost and they come back into where the feeders are inside the fence, the trees in the wintertime look like they've got leaves on them. I've got so many up in them. I do lose some that way. And the way I look at it, if I lose them, it was their fault. The others survived. Why'd they survive and the others got caught? I try to keep the predators down to the best I can, but that to me is the way you get the best out of your birds is when they mature in those conditions.
George has a good point here. He says Mother Nature depends on your location. Sometimes it's not as cruel as other locations. But he's asking, what are your thoughts on that comment? And he says out here in the islands, they rarely see any predators like the coons and snakes and the hawks. But he also says because of that, he has to be more selective in his breeding.
The area you live in, the area you're raising your birds in and breeding, okay, let's put it this way. Everybody's different. Frank's is different than mine, and I'm probably different than a lot of you who are watching this right now. How we do things are going to be a little bit different. How we raise them, how we feed them, how we shelter them, the whole bit. And sometimes, because of epigenetics, it even can change the way we select them and what traits are expressed. And if you don't have certain predators that are going to help you do some of the culling, that just means you're just going to have to do more of it yourself.
I see this all the time. People will buy fowl off these bigger breeders, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. Because I got these birds, I'm automatically in fame because I've got these birds. I'm going to have the same success the last breeder had. That's wrong. There's so much that goes with that. Just because you buy birds off somebody, that doesn't automatically give you the success of that breeder. There's nutrition, there's environment, there's so many other things that go into focus on that. You could take some really good birds and put them in a certain area and not give them the nutrition that they need, or the environment be too harsh on them, and you're not going to have the success that that last breeder had whatsoever.
Yeah, and epigenetics probably plays a bigger role. Not so much with fowl you already have in your yard, although it does play a role. It's going to determine which traits are expressed and which aren't, and sometimes it's going to even suppress some traits. But it's going to play even a bigger role, like Frank said, when you buy birds from another breeder and you take them from his place to yours. Completely different, especially from state to state, and you get them shipped to you. And a lot of times this is what happens. And I do pick on big breeders sometimes. I do pick on peddlers pretty good, but this is where I'm probably going to defend them just a little bit. Let's assume they do have good birds and you buy them and you get them shipped to you. And let's say they look great, but then you start breeding them and then all of a sudden they start changing. Okay, things are being expressed in them that weren't expressed before. And you call the breeder up and go, hey, what's going on here? And you go, I never had that in my fowl. Like I said, we're assuming that the breeder is a good breeder. A lot of times that's just epigenetics in the works, okay? And so that means that you're going to have to be a little more diligent. You're not going to be able to take his advice so much. You're going to be selecting for different things that he was selecting for, and they're going to change. They're going to be different. We're back to evolution a little bit, and epigenetics does play a role when the birds are moved from one location to the next. The weather could have an issue with it, how you manage the farm, the way you feed them, whether you're taking care of the diseases that are showing up or you're hiding them, some of the genetic inheritance and the way you select them all play a role. And one of the things we talk about a lot on the Breeders' Academy and with our members is epigenetics is the three-legged stool. And this is probably the closest you're going to get to Mother Nature right here. Of everything we're talking about, this is probably the closest we're going to get to it. And we're going to talk about more, but just listen up really carefully, is that we look at it as a three-legged stool. On the first leg, we got environment and good farm management. On the second leg, we have health and nutrition. On the third leg, we have genetic inheritance and proper selection. Any one of those, if there's any issues where there's a weakness or a problem, and then it doesn't work, the fowl don't turn out like you expected. They can be completely different than what you expected. They could be completely different from where you got them in the first place. And then you have to adjust your breed, and you have to adjust your selection, and you got to make something out of them after that.
Yeah, you're right, Kenny. Even the selection itself, that person's going to be selecting, have a totally different eye, good or bad. You may make them better. You may make them worse. It's depending on what that person selects for and the birds that he's using to select to breed back. That's where it can really go awry, just in the selection. Forget the rest of it. The selection, you get somebody that's an inexperienced breeder and they're just breeding everything they get, it's just going to create a mess. And then they're going to go back and say, what happened to these birds? You sold me these birds, they're supposed to be good birds. What happened to them? And they're thinking they got ripped off or they got taken advantage of. And in reality, it's just what we mentioned.
Yeah. So what happens is a certain trait is expressed that wasn't expressed before. And if you ignored it, probably nothing would happen. They would just keep going the way they're going. But if you select for that trait, you select it in a way that over time you exaggerate it, then it becomes a permanent part of that bird over time. When we look at epigenetics, they got to survive their environment without medications. Otherwise, you know nothing. They have to be resistant to the diseases in their area, and they have to be healthy and have a good immune system. And then they have to have a good, complete feed. Because if they don't have a complete feed, they're not going to reach their potential. And I'm talking about good feed that's not relying on medications and supplements. I'm talking about a feed that gives them everything they need to have good body, good health, be active, and it would help them be free of like parasites and things like that. And then, Frank, this is one I was thinking of too, is do that without overfeeding. Because one of the things that Tony used to say all the time to me was that if you have a hungry chicken, you have an active chicken, and an active chicken is a healthy chicken. If you're wondering whether you're overfeeding or you're underfeeding, the only thing you can do is pick them up and check them off them. But never overfeed them, because if you're overfeeding them, they're not going to be active. And if they're not active, eventually they're not going to be healthy.
My grandfather, that's one thing that he always put in my mind as a kid. He always said what you said, Kenny. He said, a hungry bird, 9 times out of 10, is a healthy bird. He's active, he's hungry, he's foraging, he's in the dirt scratching, looking for food. A lot of times, if you watch them close enough, they'll tell you what they need. They'll tell you what you need to do just by watching them closely.
And that last part of the three-legged stool was genetics, the law of inheritance, and how you select. And we always say that selection is everything. You could have the best genetics, you could have the best breeding program, but if you don't know how to select them, you're not going to go anywhere. And basically, without selection, genetics is useless. And as important genetics is, it's useless if you're not selecting them properly.
Yeah. And the old rule of thumb was, and I was once in this circle myself, I was in it quite a while. I would take days, if not weeks, to pick the correct rooster. I would really focus on that. And then I would just breed him to whatever hen that I had available, and wouldn't even pick her up, feel of her, to look at her, know anything, history about her whatsoever. And it was always, I put my focus on the rooster, never the hen. And a good breeder knows the worth of the hen and knows how to select that hen. And I say this a million times. I think a lot of breeders out there, hobbyists or whatever you want to call them, they know what a good rooster looks like, but they don't know what a worthy hen looks like. And I think once they learn that fine line on what hens to breed, I think it picks them up in levels as a breeder.
Frank, I don't think they know what a good hen is because they don't give it any value. They don't think they need to concentrate on the hen and how good the hen looks. It's all about the rooster in their eyes.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl. As a member, we'll provide you with the roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. I urge you to check it out. You've got nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
I hope to see you there. So let's get started.
You were talking about people selecting. They got to be able to select properly. How do you get to the people who don't realize that they don't know how to select properly?
It goes back to the crooked stick versus the straight stick. All we can do is show them what represents good birds what the selection process looks like, what the good traits versus the bad traits look like. And we do some of that in the podcast here in the show, but we definitely do it inside the Breeders' Academy. So I don't know how to reach everybody all the time. That's a good question, actually, Frank.
I know an answer to it, though.
What's that?
Look at what they're breeding.
They don't know,
Look
though.
at when they compare it to the birds that somebody that knows how to select, they see the difference.
But when you look at what's on Facebook, they're all selecting for the same thing. So they don't know what a good bird's supposed to look like a lot of times. Because
A lot of them does, though.
You think
when
so?
it's put in front of them, yeah, you put a bad rooster up and you put a good rooster up, and they might not know the reason they're picking that good rooster. But you put a bad one up and a good one up, and they know which one looks the best. They might not be able to tell you why or for what reasons, but a lot of them knows a good rooster when they compare the two. They're not going to pick a ugly, not right proportioned bird over one that's got the right type conformation and all the above. I really believe that, but they might not be able to tell you why.
I know what you're saying, and maybe a lot do, but there's so many that don't. And I'll tell you why. And I've seen it. They look at this bird, they look at the high station of the bird. Look how tall birds are getting. Mm-hmm. Until you point it out to them, they're so yard blind. They only see parts of the bird. They don't really understand the whole structure of the bird. So although some do, there's a lot of them that don't. They just look at the bird, they just don't see it.
There's a super amount of them up there don't know a good rooster from a bad rooster. I agree. But the biggest part, I do believe that they know the difference, because it's like this. If that be the truth, what are me and you doing? Well, what's going to bring them to us? If they don't know a good bird, they don't even know that we're raising good-looking birds.
I know how we do it.
When you post one of your birds, people's going to like it. It's going to generate likes. So that shows me they know the difference between a good bird and a bad bird, a lot of them.
I can see that. And maybe that's where we do it, because I know your Facebook page gets a lot of attention because of the birds you're posting, and I know mine do too. So maybe that's where it starts. And I've had a lot of people join the Breeders' Academy just because they like the way my birds look. Then they get in, they find out how we do it. I get it. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Well, Mark has a good question. What are the traits of the hen? What do you look for a hen? And we're not going to get into that today because that's not what we're discussing. But I'm sure we have done many episodes just on the hen prior to this. So go back in the archives and you'll find we have displayed that. But my point is that's a big show all in its own. What are the traits of the hen?
It is. And we need to do a video just on that. But many of the traits we look for in the cock, we're basically looking for in the hen. Now, obviously, she's going to look a little bit different because she doesn't have the same tail. She has the same angle, or she should. She's not going to have the same feather type. She's going to be more feminine. But all the angles should be the same in the cock as well as the hen. Should have the same broad back that tapers nicely to the tail that's flat. Should have the same angulation in the legs. The thighs should be longer than the shanks. The tail should be between 45 and 90, no more than the 90. Should have the proper head, the proper beak, the proper eyes. The upper and lower mandible should meet. If I were to take the description of the cock and place it in the hen, it would be almost the same thing. They just got to get a picture in their mind of what that looks like. So when they take a picture of their cock and hen and they put the picture side by side, does the hen represent the cock and does the cock represent the hen?
They just got to get rid of that bland color. Okay. Just take the color out of the picture and look at the proportions of body. And like Kenny said, it's the same as the cock. You want the same proportions, but in a cheerleader petite kind of way. Okay. I want my hens to not look manly. I want them to look feminine. I want them to look like a hen. But like Kenny said, I want the same proportions, the same type conformation that comes with the cock in the hen. Everything you look for in that rooster, look for in the hen. But it gets tough, I guess, Kenny, looking at a hen with just bland colors. And you look at the cock, and he's fluent when he walks, and he's proud and got all the colors. But if those hens had the same colors as those roosters, there'd be a lot of them go up missing when it comes setting time out in the wild.
I just think the cock gets so much attention because he's the pretty one. He does get the attention. And I've just seen it so many times where people used to come over here and they would take all day trying to find the right cock and then they take almost any hen. They didn't realize how important a hen is. And I think that's part of it too. They just don't know in the breeding program, in the breeding process, how important that hen actually is. And we look at it, she's the matriarch of the family.
Look at it this way, and we've said this a couple shows. All lines, I've got 3 lines headed by the cocks, and the rest are hens. And I think you're pretty close to me, Kenny. So that shows you the importance of a good hen, guys. I mean, mitochondrial DNA says it all. And that's the biggest reason she is what she's supposed to be.
So we're talking about selection. Selection needs to mirror Mother Nature. Another way of saying this is artificial selection should mirror natural selection really close. And that natural selection is the result of the selective pressures that we see within our environment. It goes back to epigenetics. Whatever they tend to be expressing could be determined by their environment, and then we select for it or we cull it, and then we can shape them as we go. The process of natural selection occurs through the interaction of 5 mechanisms, and we'll talk about a little bit of that now. The mechanisms are overpopulation, variation, inheritance, and selection. All things that happen in the wild, all things happen with natural selection, but all things that we need to consider when we're breeding our fowl. These are our tools, Frank. This is what we use to actually improve and create the strain.
Yeah. Without these, you never get to where you need to go.
Yeah, we need to simulate Mother Nature as much as possible. That's the way we're going to get the best results. She works her magic, and then we try to simulate what she's doing as much as possible. So if we're looking at the mechanisms, let's check these out real quick. Variation, as we cull the sick, defective, and standard birds. We need to cull hard, and we need to breed the best. Not best of the best exactly, but the best we have within the program.
A lot of people gets that misconstrued. Is there a place for best of the best in a breeding program? Yes, there is. But it's inside the breeding program. Once you get them established and where they need to go, then there's a place for that best of the best. But I think that's misconstrued the way people see that, the way it's said, the best to the best. They see it totally wrong than what it actually is.
And then we look at inheritance and the birds we select as breeders. If we select really good birds, we're going to get better results in the offspring, obviously. But knowing genetics plays a huge role in your selection. You can't select unless you know the traits you need to select. We can select properly by knowing what the genetic factors are of those traits. And that's where a lot of people fail, is they don't realize the importance of genetics. And so they're just speculating. They're just putting birds together, hoping they get what they want. Or they're putting 2 birds with contrasting characteristics, hoping that they get both. That's the problem. So once you understand the breed, what makes up the breed, and you understand the genetic factors of those traits, then you can select them properly and you can actually mate them properly and you get a better result.
It's funny you mentioned that. I commented on a post. A guy was taking a black-breasted red and putting it back over a black hen for the offspring, and he was asking people's advice on which way he needed to go with them to breed them back. And I had to comment on it. Those guys, there was like 26, 30 some comments, people telling him different ways to do it. Those people cannot answer that question without knowing his birds. Fact 1, if you don't know his birds, how are you going to tell him how he needs to breed them and which way to breed them if you don't know his birds? They don't know the traits that they're carrying. So how they know the direction those birds need to go? On the name and what those birds are supposed to possess by the name. So once again, it's a deal to where I guess you could call it superstition because it's non-factual. So I guess it could fall into that, but you can't tell somebody how to breed their birds in a comment and know nothing about those birds whatsoever and the traits that they hold. You can't.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of that lately. The name game's been a big one lately.
Unfortunately, it has.
I have to get off the page. The name game, the infusion of blood, and the correlation of traits, otherwise known as the blanket effect. Those 3 get me the most. When they start talking about the name game, which doesn't exist, it's like you guys are talking nonsense. You don't even know what you're talking about, and you're talking about something that doesn't exist. And then I put something on my Facebook recently that had something to do with the infusion of new blood. I wanted everybody's opinion. And once again, I was so proud of the response I was getting from all the members. They're getting it. It made me feel like we're actually teaching something. They're learning. We're making a difference. And I don't want to say I made the mistake, but I did engage a few people on the Facebook page on their responses because they felt like it was a real thing and they've been doing it for years and they thought it was successful. And I challenged them and it ended up being huge. I don't want to say a fight, but a huge discussion over quite a bit of time. And I just kept throwing the facts at them. I kept throwing the science at them. I kept showing them what they were saying, why it didn't work. And then they finally gave up and disappeared.
Nancy, if you want to read, that's going to blow Kenny's mind. I hate to say it, but Nothing shocks me anymore. But I'm going to say I'm a little bit shocked, Nancy.
There's a farm here where a guy is saying to pick the third best and breed to him, never go to the full package.
You can't make this stuff up.
Got to explain
Why
that one to
wouldn't
me.
you not want it?
I guess it works for him.
I don't get that. Wow.
If you breed the third, you're going to get the third. You're never going to make it to the full pack if you're actually picking the third best. So
That's like breeding backwards.
I don't know
understand
what that
thinking.
is, Kenny.
No, I don't understand that one either.
That's not. I don't have
know where to
response
go
for
with
that
that actually, because it doesn't
No,
make sense
I
to me. It's like you got to explain to me why that's a.
Somebody pulled that one out of the back pocket, I think,
Yeah.
way down deep.
One of the mechanisms was overpopulation. So we look in the wild. What happens is, let's say the jungle fowl. That's a good one. To stay close to the chickens. Now they hatch their chicks. Let's say they hatch 10 chicks. Only a small portion of those are going to survive. Mother Nature is going to cull out the sick and the defective ones. Predators are going to pick out the slow ones and the ones that just can't get away. And what's left are what we call the standouts. And it's the same thing we do in a proper breeding program. We hatch as many chicks as we can manage afford. We cull them down to the top 10%. And then from there, we select the standouts. And those are the ones we're going to breed to advance our strain. And then whatever's left after that, we sell them or whatever. Because for some people, they're a really good starter fowl. But for our strain, we need the very best to move forward because we never want to breed anything that's not better than the parents or better than what we already have. Because if you're not breeding better and they're not becoming better each generation, you're moving backwards, not forward. So overpopulation in the wild, when it comes to Mother Nature, natural selection, we do the same thing.
Yep. Mother Nature has different influences as far as the reason that they overpopulate. Feed the other animals for one, predators and what have you. But it's really no different than what we do. It's just a slower process. And even with those, 1% to 2% is going to live to reproduce. Out of the millions that's been born and brought here, a lot of them is used for food or natural deaths or many other things, accidents, what have it. But the main thing is, she is selecting and going through and keeping the standouts and the ones that can survive and stay away from the predator.
If they can't adapt to their environment, they're not going to survive. And like we were talking about earlier, everyone's environment is different. The birds you get or the birds you have must adapt to their environment. If you get birds that can't, then you're reliant on medications, and that means you're going to have to care for them more than you probably want to. And this happens most of the time when they do reach new environments. Mother Nature is not going to preserve the weak or defective birds. Why do we hold on to birds that are defective? Why do we hold on to birds that don't represent their breed or are sick? We do it all the time.
They think they're cute. We don't know they're defective because we don't know what we don't know.
No, but all we're doing is raising the wrong birds. All we're doing is raising sick birds. Medications only hide the sickness, Frank.
Yeah. But there you go again, though, Kenny. They think because they're not showing symptoms of being sick and it's been hidden by the medications that they're not sick. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. But if you went and had that chicken checked, it would still show positive for those diseases that it's carrying without even showing the first sign of it. Medications make them carriers. One person may think that they've got a healthy flock. There's disease on every one of them, but I would much rather my birds be resistant to diseases in their environment than me having to pump medications to them 24/7. Because once again, Kenny, Nancy, we go back into Mother Nature. If those birds was brought up in the wild, they would have never, ever bred. And there's a reason that they would have never bred. Mother Nature has its own security system to make sure things like that isn't able to breed and have offspring on the ground.
Yeah. Medications, like we say, don't eliminate the disease. It only hides it.
That's it.
And weak birds create weak offspring. And that's for generations. The more you do that, the weaker the strain gets to the point when they can't even survive. But Frank, Mother Nature, it doesn't tolerate a sick and defective bird. I'm just trying to figure out why we do. To me, those should be, especially if you're free ranging them in the beginning, those should be predator bait. Let predators have them. It's going to save you a lot of time and money later down the road.
You know, you said it last time we was in the back end. I'm not going to say everything that you said. I've always said you breed sickness. It's the worst trait that we could influence. And if you're breeding sick to sick, then what are you doing, Kenny? You're magnifying that particular trait when you're breeding sick to sick. They're never going to get better that way. by breeding sick chickens. What they're sick with, the offspring's going to be sick with. So it's a never-ending cycle when you breed sick chickens. And once again, in Mother Nature, these things don't exist, and they don't exist for a reason.
And we look at how Mother Nature creates new species. And we look at different ways people are using breeding programs to create their strains. And a lot of these breeding programs don't actually create strains. They just keep introducing new blood. And we talk about it all the time. The closer you could stay to evolution, natural selection, Mother Nature, the closer you're going to get to actually creating a true strain. And the biggest one we see, because they do add the new blood, is gene flow. And you're never going to be able to create a strain until you stop the flow of genes. And that's what people are doing all the time. In the beginning, they're just adding new blood every year. And then they get to a point when they're actually starting to create a strain. They start seeing some kind of uniformity, and then they add new blood again. So basically, they disrupt the family by introducing new genes so they continue the flow of genes. We're never going to get to a point when we see what we actually have within the gene pool we can start taking advantage of by selecting the better traits, by culling the worst ones, until we stop the flow of genes. We have to stop the flow of genes. We never will have an idea what we got or what we have to work with.
Yeah. You're never going to get there because it's a revolving door. When you're adding blood, you're not watering the birds that you're adding the blood to. You're not only watering those down, you're introducing a host of other traits that you don't want. Sickness, different traits in your birds that you don't want in there. So you just keep exposing and adding those to it. We work so hard to keep those out of our birds, Kenny, by adding blood, all that work that we've done to take out the defects and the sickness, and it's gone. It's over with. We've added it right back in them again with outside blood.
Yeah. You just can't create a strain if you're going to infuse all the time, cross them, outcross, whatever. It's got to stop. What's this, Nancy?
So Kaiku is asking, Kenny, would you say exposing them to their natural environment during the development stages helps enhance natural immunity? Because he's got an uncle and cousin who totally disbelieves in free-ranging chicks.
I've done it for 40 years.
Pick up the birds that are free-ranging compared to the ones in the cage. They're the healthiest. They feel the best. Mother Nature is going to weed out the ones that shouldn't be here. I always say it. If a bird gets sick or a bird gets cold or a predator gets it, then it was a bird that wasn't meant to be here. Now, resistance to disease and building a healthy immune system, it's about exposing them. They're going to be exposed to the diseases in their environment, and they're either going to survive or they're not. And the ones that survive are going to be the healthiest ones. The one that didn't survive wasn't supposed to be here anyways. And every time you medicate them, I don't want to put down vaccinations. The only time I have a problem with vaccinations is if they're vaccinating birds with vaccinations that aren't prevalent in their area, trying to cover all of them. I don't think that's a good idea. But medications, if you're actually trying to create a strain, maintain a strain, or improve a strain for generations, I think medications actually hinder you. They actually hold you back. They actually hide the disease. You never know where you're at. To me, the ones that are actually using medications are going to be the peddlers. They can't keep their birds alive without the medications, and they can't sell the birds if the birds aren't alive. Every bird on their farm has a monetary value, and it's the medications that get them to the point where they can actually sell them and get them off their farm. So I have an issue with all that. So I think he's right in some ways, but I just tweak it a little bit. That's all.
Yeah. The thing is, genetics, nutrition, the environment, what we've been talking about, especially the nutrition, is going to keep your birds healthy and make them more tolerable to becoming disease resistance with the genetics that they have. Because it's like this, through, I'm going to say, this time now until September, I can have my chicks free range, have them up 6-7 months old, cage ready to pin them up. And I can just use a little bit of cracked corn out in a feeder. And Kenny, you've probably done this many times. You can get one of those birds and pick it up, and it's perfect. They'll feel as good as the birds that you've got in your pen with not near the nutrition, because they've got bugs, small mammals. They've got so much they can forage on in those leaves in the woods. There's just so much they can eat. That's the way Mother Nature does. Now, wintertime, that's the reason we say a lot of times not to hatch your birds off when it's in colder weather, because they don't get all that nutrition that they need to develop and grow on. And with the development and growing comes resistance. I think a lot of times the genetics and the nutrition and the environment goes hand in hand. If you don't have a grip on all three of those, you're really not going to get the full potential of your birds.
The three-legged stool. It's the best thing to follow.
It is.
to move your strain forward, to stay as close to Mother Nature as possible, get the best out of the genetics that they have, taking advantage of the phenotype, but also taking advantage of the genotype when it's expressed. If they lack any of those things, they're just not going to excel. I will say this, though. You can't build an immunity. You can't build any resistance to disease if they're not exposed to it. So you got to allow them to be exposed to those in your environment, because eventually you're going to stop medicating them, and you're going to get hit pretty good if you're not ready for it.
You make them addict to medication. You start them out from a young age medicating them. Like a lot of people, LS50, as soon as they come out of the egg, that's the first drink of water they get is antibiotics. And once you start them, like Kenny said, you're going to have to keep them on it the rest of their life, because if you don't, they're dead.
Yeah. And you may have to do that in the beginning when you first get the birds. You may have to raise them the way they raise them just to get them going so you can get offspring on the ground and then eventually get them off of it. But don't plan on being on medications forever. Hey, Nancy, I got a question. Is your light work? Have you been clicking the light at all?
I haven't needed to.
I didn't know if I missed it. I gave Nancy a tool, and we're going to give it a try, but she didn't even use it.
I did too. I've used it a few times. One time you totally ignored me.
No, I just didn't see it.
I'm giving him a hard time. Let me explain the story really quick. I promise I'll be very fast. So I've been complaining that I'll have things that I want to say or things I want to ask during the time that Kenny and Frank are doing a subject matter, and I can't get that question in because they're going back and forth so much that I just can't get in. And I've been told not to interrupt. Okay. So Kenny got me this handy dandy tool. I press the button and a little red light goes on in his room. So I can say, hey, I got a question.
Click it. Let me see. Yep.
That was smart. I thought that was a garage door opener.
No, it turns on a red light.
Doug likes it.
Yeah, because I'm watching you. I'm looking at you, but you just sit there with this look on your face. It's the same smile you give me all the time. So I'm supposed to know what that means.
She used to go.
I did.
Yeah,
and then I asked him, should I just start raising my hand again? He goes, no, don't do that.
You know, Frank, that's one of the reasons I'm disheveled today is I usually give the...
Again.
No, it's not your fault. Usually before we get on here, I take a few minutes just to go over the outline real quick and see how I want to cover it. And I haven't seen this outline for like 2 days, okay? So I forgot what I put on here. And then at the last minute, the delivery came in the mail. And so you see my on-air light up there? I got that, a couple other things. I got her light. I had to hook up her light and everything and plug it all in and made sure it all worked. And then we only had like 10 minutes to actually get on the show. So yeah, I'm a little disheveled. But this should work good. I was getting a little nervous. I'm going, she's going to let me have it because I have not seen the light go on once.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. So I thought you'd put it to the test. I bought that thing for nothing.
No, I've been getting in when I've needed to get in. So
Should have got him a strobe, Nancy. Got one of those strobes like he's got out on the chicken yard. That way when you hit it, the strobe starts going off.
I'd probably go into a seizure and fall off my chair.
Yeah, we need to bring in one of those strobes one of these days and show everybody what we're talking about with the predators.
Oh, they're great.
Oh, yeah, I should do that. Remind me. I just have to grab one and bring it in here.
And they're cheap. I paid like $12.99 for the ones I got. They were super cheap.
Yeah. We're almost done. I want to cover one more thing. If you look at some of the breeding programs, a lot of them just don't make sense to me, why they do things. And if you look at the Founders Program, my members know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me pull up the public version. Like I always tell people, don't get excited because this doesn't exactly show you much. The overall program's there, but everything's labeled in such a way you probably don't know what it is. But my members know exactly what we're talking about. If you look at the way Mother Nature does things, this program is set up that way. And one of the biggest factors that make all this work is it's a factor of genetic drift called the Founders Effect. And I based the Founders Program, and that's the reason I call it the Founders Program, on the way the Founders Effect worked. But it also includes, like I talked about earlier, genetic flow. Bottlenecking would be a whole different factor. That's part of genetic drift too. But if you look at the way genetic drift works and the Founders Effect, it has a lot to do with the way I created the Founders Program. And I believe it's one of the reasons why it works so well, because the whole program's based on science. And earlier today, I was listening to someone who was trying to teach people a breeding program. And it was funny, he got some things right, but he got them in the wrong order and he left some things out. I'm like, wow, if he only knew with a little bit of adjustment that he'd probably have a pretty good program.
That was the problem that I always had, Kenny. You'd find something and you think, oh, okay, this is great. This is really great. And you'd read it and you're like, okay, where do I go after this? What do I do after this? Do I just stop? It's done? Or that was never a hole. Now, see, Kenny had that in a circle. And that's how I see a good breeding program. Without it being a hole going in a complete circle, it's not a breeding program. It's a method. You'll never get there.
This is another way to look at it. And Frank's the one that kind of said, hey, this is what it looks like to me. And I go, hey, that's a good idea. So I put it together real quick. And if you look at the way it's set up, and like I said, my members know exactly what this means, you'd understand that you never have to add outside blood ever again. You can see it starts with the genesis phase, it goes into the transformation phase, and then it goes into the foundation phase. And once you're there, it just repeats itself.
Kenny, that's what we said on the last show, and I just wanted to repeat it. A lot of people says, oh, there's no way that you can have a strain for 30, 40 years and not add blood in them to freshen them up. And I agreed with them. And Kenny's like, what? And I was like, because they don't know how. Yeah. If they knew how, then they'd be able to. You notice they don't say there's not a method or a way that can't be done. They just say it can't be done. But you're talking about people, and the ones that saying that's the only reason they're saying it is because basically they don't have the knowledge to be able to do it. And it can be done very easily.
Yeah. What's he saying, Nancy?
He's saying that your program will show you the advantages and disadvantages of different breeding methods and how to apply them to real situations in your yard.
Yeah. And
well said.
Yeah, that's good. And this is what I put on my Facebook page recently, which created a huge discussion. And once again, I was so proud with the way the members handled it and what they said and how they described it. And it was amazing. It surprised me when a handful of people actually wanted to be contrary to this. And I was like, didn't you read what everybody else said? Because they were giving you a lot of good hints and a lot of good ideas. And like I said, I challenged them a little bit and tried to dig in to see what they were thinking. And then went back and forth for a little while trying to convince them, trying to give them the information they need to maybe change their mind. But it wasn't working. I had one guy close where he was saying, oh, okay, I'm willing to learn. Go ahead and show me. Okay, join the Breeders' Academy. We'll do a coaching call, and I'll show you exactly what you need to do. I know you'll be impressed. And he put a like on there, went to someone else and said, don't let him talk you into joining his program. Okay, you're out.
The way I see the influence of outside blood with the breeders that do it, and if that's what they want to do, have at it. But if you want to do it seriously, there's another method of doing it. But when I see them say they add blood every 2-3 years, I see the inconsistency bar doing this all over the place. Why would they want that inconsistency when they could have very little move within the graph whatsoever? Be consistent and be more predictable.
It's more like this.
Curve.
Instead of like this, boom. You know what I mean? Because
it's like waves in an ocean, so to speak. Have a good bird, bad bird, mediocre bird, a crappy bird, another crappy bird, mediocre bird. That's not for me. Once I got my eyes opened up, basically just on hybrid vigor alone, hybrid vigor had me fooled for a lot of years, Kenny, a lot of years. And I was looking at hybrid vigor as bloodline. And finally, I come to the point to realize it wasn't that rooster or that hen that done that to my birds. I could have took any strain of non-related bird and got the same results that I got. So a lot of people, when they see that hybrid vigor, they automatically think, oh, this is the greatest bloodline in the world. Look what it done to my birds. And only it is hybrid vigor.
Yeah, Mark's right. Adding blood from the outside is just too much of a risk. It's like going to Vegas and playing blackjack. It is, because you pretty much... Okay, I'm trying not to go too deep because we're going to go in the back end pretty soon. But we say it all the time. It's like a broken record. All you have to do is check out the way meiosis works and the crossover event and the fact that you're recombinating the genes. And the distribution of gametes creates variation. And that also wipes out not only the infusion of new blood and the idea of bringing it in and trying to pull it out, getting the best of both chickens. That doesn't work. Meiosis shows that. And the correlation of traits, otherwise known as the blanket theory. The idea of taking two blankets, both having different holes, matching them up, and then trying to get the best of both chickens so that you can preserve the best of both traits of those chickens. In between Mendel's second law of inheritance, the independent assortment of genes, meiosis, the crossover event, it just proves that none of it works. And I tried to show these guys that. And the more I told them, I think the more it was not exactly confusing them. I think it was like It was frustrating them because they like their old ways. They don't want the new ways. They want to be able to do things the way they always did. And they always thought it worked. They thought they got the results they want, but they even admit it too, that they still had to add blood every so often to refresh the blood. And I said, you just proved my point. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know a lot about genetics. I just know what works, and I'm not going to try to fix what's not broken. I'm like, okay, I don't know what else to say.
Well, in their eyes though, Kenny, it comes down to, I can put it in there, and if it's not any good, or if I don't like the blood, I can always just breed it out and add more of my blood. They think that. They really think they can breed it out. That's the problem. Going back to Mark real fast, that is like playing blackjack in Vegas, but without aces or high cards. I just had to add that to it.
Yeah.
You were talking about the hen a little while ago. I just got a quick question on that. If you have a hen that produces a lot of males, more males than females, would that be considered like a preferred hen to breed to?
Depends on the breeder. If he wants all male, I don't think that's a good plan, because if you're just crossing birds and you're just producing hybrids, if you want a lot of roosters, that's what you do. But you still have to find those hens.
That's a different scenario ever breeding too, Nancy. You take a hen, get all stags out over this year, you breed her next year, you could get all pullets. It's not that way every year.
Some hens do produce more of one sex than others. I would select hens that are even on both, especially if you're creating a strain, because you don't want to get on one side.
I've never run into that.
No, it's actually a real thing. It's called sex determination. It's a selectable trait. It actually is.
They even had that to where temperature. Scientists have actually done this, that temperature could do it. So people was reading those articles, they were setting their incubators down colder for it. Didn't help one bit.
Yeah, I've heard something about that. Yeah. Sex determination is the hen.
No, and I've never had it happen to me as a breeder.
Oh, I have. I've had some hens that were producing males or females way more than the other one, and I would cull those. I wanted hens that would produce half and half. And that's if she's pretty much hatching everything that she's laying and you're getting an accurate count. Because if some of those eggs got crushed or didn't hatch, then you only hatch some of them, it could skew the count. But no, it's a selectable trait, and sex determination is a big deal. Okay, so we need to get in the back end, or we're going to run out of time here. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. I want to tell our members, join us in the back end, and we'll do the members roundtable live. See you guys later. Thanks.
Bye.
See you guys.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you again for joining us on the Bred to Perfection podcast show. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where by becoming a member, you can increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and take you and your fowl to the next level.
We can also show you how to create a strain from hybrid crosses or mongrel flocks, and help you to create, maintain, and improve your present strains. We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel anytime.
To join us at the Breeders Academy membership website, go to www.breedersacademy.com.
Best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
While you're checking out the Breeders Academy, make sure to sign up for our newsletter, The Breeders Bulletin. We provide a lot of free bonus materials and some great information that will take you and your fowl to the next level. Well, that's it for now.
We hope you join us next time for another episode of Bred to Perfection. We'll see you later.
Bye.